Hello, everyone, and welcome to Growing Together, a gardening podcast with me, John Lamb, and Don Kinzler, a lifelong gardener in the North Dakota State University Extension horticulturist for Cass County. Don, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, John.
Well, we've got a really special show today, don't we?
We do.
We do. For those who want to know, we are going to go visit Don's garden. He talks about his garden a lot, and he's invited us out. So
it's going to be a fun afternoon.
Yeah, we're going to look at all the plants that you've got out there, your landscaping, kind of your thoughts on how you approached it. It'll be really fun. But before we get out there, we want to let you know that this podcast is sponsored by Bloomfield Garden Center, a family-owned retail greenhouse providing locally grown plants since 1974. And you can find them 1 mile north of Sabin, Minnesota, or 6 miles south of I-94, just off exit 6. Just a quick drive from Fargo-Moorhead. And with that, let's head on out to Don's garden. So as promised, Don, you're letting us into your yard. We may not get into your house, but that's okay. You're letting us into your yard. How long have you been out here? And tell us a little bit about this whole project.
Well, welcome everyone. And, well, it's been a fun project. Our house was built in 1895, and it's had two moves. First, it moved from Fergus Falls to a spot in South Fargo, which ended up being a flood prone. So the city worked with us to relocate the house 7 years ago to the spot where it currently is in South Fargo. And the property, when the house was moved 7 years ago, basically all surrounded then by dirt. We have trees on the north side, which are nice, established trees on the west side. So that gave a little bit of a background that we could feature everything else. So just from starting from scratch. And of course, we've enjoyed the house, 1895 Victorian with the front porch. And so when we were trying to decide then, when you've got a blank slate, where do you start? Well, we knew from our past location that we had been at for 30 some years. We knew some mistakes that we had made that we didn't want to duplicate this time. So what we did was we started with the circle driveway. We had a circle driveway that circled up to the front porch at the old place. That worked well, so we did that here. Then when we were trying to decide, okay, with just dirt all around, where do you start putting the lawn? Where do you put gardens? Where do you put flower beds? Where do you put landscaping? So we wanted the front yard to be visible. I like talking gardening, I like doing gardening, and I like people to be enjoying what I'm enjoying too. So we decided to put annual beds and perennial flower beds kind of up in front. And when people are walking by, I enjoy when I'm working out in them. I enjoy talking to people too. So we decided to make fairly large perennial flower gardens in the front, kind of off to the sides, combination perennials and annuals. And so what do? Rectangular, square? Well, when I got looking, we designed curving paths, kind of curving flower beds that would echo the curving circular driveway. So we developed kind of a circular type theme, and out in the middle of the curved circle driveway is a curved flower bed too, a perennial bed. So we kind of followed through the lines curving, and of course in nature too, anytime you can work with curves in your landscape, it's just a little more natural because you rarely see straight lines, square lines in nature. So by the front door also then, and front door should be kind of a focal point. The eye on all of our landscapes, we should kind of try to focus the eye towards that front door because that becomes welcoming then. So if we could develop a focal point at the front door, so on either side of the front door we featured roses and hedges. The hedge is alpine currant, and so we made curving hedges to again echo the curved theme. And now if you take, and it's always fun, doing show and tell over the radio or podcast. But now picture this, picture the alpine currant hedge, okay? They're in curved, but notice that the lower part of the alpine currant hedge is wider than the top, like a pyramid, a flat top pyramid. And the reason for that is purposeful. It's been trimmed that way so that the lower branches will receive more sunlight.
Very
And then
smart.
the lower branches, because they get more sunlight, they'll have more leaves. They won't get leggy. If you simply trim a hedge, straight down, it seems the top branches always overtop the base, and you end up getting a leggy with nothing at the bottom. So I kind of enjoy trimming it in that flat top pyramid, and it seems like it works quite well.
Well, making it even more welcoming is that you've got these 2 urns out in front, but you've got lots of planters out front that you're adding a lot of. Looks like a lot of petunias, some sweet potato vines. Talk a little bit about very bright colors, very bright, sunny, lovely colors.
And annual flowers in containers are a great way to make that focal point during the growing season, because that just naturally draws a person's eye to that. And it's fun. We grow a lot of geraniums. And one thing that I've really noticed about geraniums, if you plant them in combination with other annual flowers, sometimes the other flowers will overtake the geraniums, and the geranium doesn't do as well. So over the years, we've learned just to put those geraniums in their own pots. So if you take a look, those potted geraniums, nothing in there except geraniums, and they're doing really quite well. For example, if we put a sweet potato vine in with those, it would probably overtake. And so one thing that you might try is try some planters with just geraniums. Then we've got the petunias, and notice the yellow one,
Yes.
Bee's Knees.
Bee's Knees,
It's
okay.
an All-America winner from, I believe, last year.
Okay.
Bee's Knees. Isn't that an intense yellow color?
Yes.
Again, fun to
Super
paint
creamy
pictures
yellow, too.
over a podcast.
Yeah.
But imagine a deep, intense yellow color. And it stays so compact, and yet it flows over a container, but yet it doesn't get leggy and spindly.
So is that one of the super petunias then?
It is.
Okay.
Yep, it's in kind of that broad supertunia category.
And then talk a little bit about the bushes here, because you're getting some lovely purple highlights in there, really, really nice. And then also it's gonna be adding some height too, isn't it?
It does. The rose that we decided on was one called Canada Blooms. It was developed in Canada, and
Those are rose bushes. Wow,
Those are rose
I would not have
bushes.
guessed.
Yeah, and they're right now out of bloom, but they've got some more buds. It's a beautiful pink-flowered Canadian rose. The thing that really attracted me to this, is why I planted 6 of them, is the rose flower form is more like the hybrid tea. That perfect rose, and it has some aroma. I've got shrub-type roses too, but this type of rose, hardier than hybrid teas, etc., but it has a little more of a perfect rose flower in a nice deep pink.
And I love how here the hedges and then your planters and the rows, it's also a curved area. It's not, even though we're going straight up to the house, it's not just all linear, just all these lines drawing you up to the stairs. You're drawn into looking at the flowers, at the bushes, and then that draws you in off to the sides too.
And
It's
what
really
I
lovely.
enjoyed using for the edging to separate the planting beds from the grass is bricks, repurposed bricks. Some were come from an old schoolhouse, the exterior, and others just oddball places that I got these, the bricks that make the edging. And so they worked really, really well. I got to tell you one thing, though. It's fun to always learn new things. The front walkway leading up to our porch is brick also. I made a big mistake. And they're crumbling.
Okay.
Now the brick all along our dividing beds, the edging type bricks, those are beautiful. They were from a buildings, but they were the exterior brick. The brick I used on our front walkway was brick that came out of our chimney, which had to be taken off down in interior of the house when it was moved to lower the weight of the house. And we didn't use that chimney anyway with modern natural gas. So anyway, we thought, well, we're going to repurpose those bricks. We're going to make the front walkway out of those. Well, in about 2 years' time, they totally crumbled. Apparently, obviously, the interior brick inside a house is not the same quality of brick that's used exterior in a building. So all my other brick edging, holding up beautifully. In fact, some of it we moved from the old place and brought here, so some of it's held up 30 years. But my front 6-year-old walkway is totally crumbling, so I will redo.
Okay.
We learn.
You do learn, and then that's the beauty of talking to you about it, is that maybe we'll learn from some of your mistakes, and we will learn about that. So let's take a look at another area here. Where do you want to go?
Yeah, let's head out front to the circled area. We've got a perennial blue salvia, and it's an All-America winner called Blue Bayou. You know, not Bayou as in Louisiana type Bayou, but Blue Bayou. Clever play on words, I guess. But it's a new All-America, a perennial blue salvia. Now, the blue salvia have been around for a while. Lots of perennial gardens have them. But this one, what made it an All-America winner, a little bit of increased hardiness, and it has a longer blooming time. And also, if you deadhead, cut off the old spent blossoms, it has a faster reblooming rate. So you get more color throughout the summer.
Are you still on your first round, or have you already sheared off?
This is still the first round.
First round is still pretty good.
Yeah, it started blooming sometime late June, and now it's still blooming really, really good. So I thought a mass planting of that would be fun. You know, it's also, when a person's designing, whether it's annual flowers or a perennial garden, it's fun to have a little bit of everything, but sometimes it's fun to have a mass planting of something, because that gives an awfully good look too.
Yeah.
For example, that mass planting of Blue Bayou, kind of dramatic, isn't it? And you could combine that with other perennials, but by itself in a planting looks kind of nice too.
Yeah, what are the shrubs behind here?
And the shrubs behind are hydrangeas,
okay.
the panicle type of hydrangea. And now, hydrangeas take a while to establish. 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. They've been in place here. I think I planted these maybe 3 years ago.
Okay.
And it takes them a while to get to their full potential. So gardening teaches patience.
Yep.
You know, they don't look really spectacular yet. Hydrangea, the word itself, means water loving. And so the more water we can give them, the better.
And yeah, and you'll see too that they will obviously, they're not to their full size, and they're also not to their full flower. So you've left plenty of room in between for them to grow closer to, but not against each other.
You know, you brought up the point, leaving plenty of space. A big mistake I made at our old location when I first landscaped it was to not come out far enough from the house foundation with the planting beds. If you notice, like on the corners of the house where I've come out, I think I came out 12 feet, 14 feet in some spots. Big mistake I made at the old place. The plants look so small. They look so cute when they're small. and then 30 years later, this stuff is all grown over and it's hanging over the edging out into the lawn. And so I tried to avoid that mistake by just coming out much more. You know, I've never had anybody tell me, you know, man, when we landscaped, we came out too far from the house. Usually it's the total opposite. And so I tried to avoid that mistake, which means during some of the first years, it doesn't always look full and ready to go. But you know, when we used to have the garden center and sold perennial plants, we always advised people, if it looks filled and ready to go after you're done planting, you've done it wrong. Yeah, we need to leave space, because then the plants will fill out and kind of grow to their full potential.
You'll see that when you come over to my house.
Some spaces.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, the space, but it's great. And I like to hear what you've done too, that on the north side and the south side of the lot, you both have, again, plots, flower and garden plot areas there too, which is really nice. Do you want to look at one?
Yeah, let's take a look over here. Now, I love perennial flowers, but I also love annual flowers. Now, a person could plan a flower bed where you have a mixture of perennials and annuals, but I like lots and lots of annuals, and because they're so fun to grow. So I designed perennial flower beds where the perennials are on the interior of these big curving beds, and the perennial flowers are mulched with wood, kind of shredded bark type mulch. And the underlayment under the shredded wood is cardboard.
Okay.
A person could use fabric under that, but I wanted to dig, divide, move with the ready access. And landscape fabric, you have to cut and and things like that. But if you use cardboard as an underlayment, which has worked beautifully for us, you can cut and just get another piece of cardboard, splice in as you need. You can kind of move things around better. So the center of these big beds are perennial flowers with underlayment of cardboard and wood mulch on top for moisture control, weed control. Then the outsides, all around the outsides, are annual beds, planted, of course, in just dirt that I work up, cultivate, rototill each spring. The annual flowers we start in our basement from seed.
Okay.
You know, I never got the greenhouse growing out of our blood, and so we've got, in our basement, we've got big 8-foot-long fluorescent lights that we grow all of this under. So it's fun. So we've got all the different types of annuals that I kind of enjoy. Lots of marigolds. I love those. They're so easy and cheerful.
Bright color.
And look at that pink zinnia.
Love
Isn't
the
that
zinnia.
nice?
I
Yeah,
love
short-growing zinnia called holly pink. H-O-L-I, pink.
I just love the flower shape of it too.
Yeah.
The layers of the leaves and how they're just kind of layered over each other, almost like a bird. They're almost like feathers.
Yep, on a short, fairly compact, healthy, vigorous, stocky looking plant, and a good vibrant pink. Those are really pretty, aren't they? The petunia that's right beside it is one of the wave types.
Okay.
It's a little neater wave, neater in that it doesn't sprawl too far, but that one is called Opera Pink Morn.
Okay.
Pink Morn. It's kind of a two-tone pink, lighter in the middle, a little deeper on the outsides. Yeah, so pretty petunia. There's another one just right over here, a bright, bright pink petunia, and the bed is just covered in those in that area. That's called Tidal Wave Hot Pink. Now, Tidal Wave, of course, one of the wave series, but Tidal Wave Hot Pink is interesting in that it performs differently depending on your spacing. If you space it about 18 inches apart, by the end of the season, it mounts itself vertically to 2 to 3 feet high, if you can believe it. And we've grown that one for years. If you space it about 2 feet apart, they'll spread outward 2.5 feet, and they won't get quite as high vertically, the whole bed. But just a mass of blossoms.
I love seeing them really tall like that.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
And
by the end of the season, it's only it's only the third week or so in July here, and they're already very full. Another perennial in the middle there that I really like, and that's the giant fleece flower. It's got a fun Latin name, Persicaria polymorpha. I love Latin names because even if I was talking to somebody in Germany and I referred to, they may not know giant fleece flower, but they'd know or could look up Persicaria polymorpha. It's the universal language of plants, and a big, massive perennial. They easily get 6 feet tall, 6 feet wide. They bloom beginning in June and then through middle of July with a white cream color. Right now they're fading to a more of a tannish cream, but even when they develop their tan flower, they're still pretty, but awesome in the middle of summer, and such a dramatic, dynamic statement for like the back of a perennial garden or somewhere where you want some height and to fill out an area.
And how old are those?
Those would be 5 years.
That's really pretty impressive just in 5 years.
It is.
I mean, because we were talking about hydrangeas, how hydrangeas really take a little bit more time.
They do. And of course, it takes time to develop a perennial garden, doesn't it? And flower beds and landscapes. It does take time. Some of the Europeans, I've heard it said by some of the European garden designers, that it takes at least 400 years to get a really good, some of these old, ancient European gardens, so it takes about 400 years.
Well, and in the middle
I'm
here...
going to try for less than that.
Okay. Well, with the perennials here in the middle, I mean, this is a good example of what you talk about having something that blooms early, having something that blooms middle, and having things that'll be blooming. So at different times, you've got a lot of color. It looks like the irises they've all passed. They're done flowering for the year, but the daylilies are really coming in looking great.
Daylilies are coming on. Some of the roses are still blooming nicely. Phlox, the tall-growing phlox is pretty. But just look, even the iris. Even though they're not blooming, they've been deadheaded, the old spikes taken off, but even just the fan-shaped leaves with kind of a bluish-green tint, they even look pretty, don't they?
They really look
blooming.
nice. Yeah,
There's peonies in there that kind of give the greenery almost a shrub type look. So that's the fascinating part about a perennial garden, is that it is constantly changing. It's kind of a surprise. It keeps, and that's why I like annuals on the outside. Annuals give that vibrant color. And this arrangement allows me to do both of my passions, the annual flowers and the perennials. A person could intertwine the two. You could plant annual flowers within the perennial gardens. I would give a total different look.
You said that you start your annuals inside on seed. Now seeing how much you have, how early do you start those seeds?
It depends on the type. The nonstop begonias start in January.
Okay.
And then February comes another wave of things. March is a heavy month for petunias. Middle of March is marigolds. So I have kind of a calendar, and each one is started at the appropriate time.
I think in this winter we're going to have a couple shows talking about
Definitely.
Seeds. And
under fluorescent lights, I'm transforming everything to LED. So it cuts down on the electric bill, which isn't bad either under fluorescence.
All right, where do you want to go for here?
Now let's head over there.
Let's go back in the yard a little bit.
All right.
Get 3 months of local news for just 99 cents a month. You'll get unlimited access to the news you need to stay engaged and connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe now to get 3 months of local news for only 99 cents a month.
Okay, one thing in our landscape that I really enjoy, and that is the low-growing creeping junipers. Because now here in this area, we've got about 4 different types, and notice the different colors. Some of them are deep green, and they only get 6, 8, 12 inches high at most and spread outward. So I love the color contrast between the kind of silvery blue, the deep green, the different textures, and so the use of creeping junipers in a landscape and how they intermingle among the deciduous leafy type shrubs. Also, I've tried for contrast in color. We've got the summer wine 9-bark with the deep burgundy colors.
That's just one plant?
That's one shrub.
One shrub.
Yeah. And that's why I strive to give it enough space, because I've so oftentimes crowded things too much.
That's got to be about, 8 to 10 feet across?
8 to 10 feet across, and maybe 5.5, 6 feet in height.
And just a rich, it lives up to its name, Burgundy, but it's just a really rich
summer wine.
Summer wine.
Good name.
Yeah.
Good name for it.
Perfect.
And also in other ways to kind of play in the colors and the textures, I have 3 Dakota Sunspot Potentillas. Dakota Sunspot, that's a great name. It was developed at NDSU. It was selected from the North Dakota Badlands, so it's well adapted, loves our conditions, but it has a flower that's a little richer, a little bigger than other Potentillas, stays blooming longer, and so that yellow flowered right in front of the dark burgundy of the summer wine, and in kind of with the creeping junipers. I love the contrast that makes, and creating contrast with the different colors, textures, that really makes interest, doesn't it?
What is this one? Talk about this one that's just off the corner of the front porch here. What's this one with the interesting berries?
That is aronia.
Aronia, okay, that's aronia berries,
yeah.
okay.
And there are aronia farms in North Dakota and Minnesota, and aronia berry is one of the highest berries in antioxidants, that good stuff for us. And look at the heavy fruit set on it. It's got a little bit of a yellowish tint to the leaves because it was lacking in iron. So I treated it with iron. The leaves should be a rich, deep green. I gave it the iron treatment to treat the iron deficiency chlorosis. But the aronia is a wonderful berry. It has to be fully ripe in order to eat fresh off the vine, because it's a little bit tart. But if it's fully ripe, then I enjoy it. My wife, Mary, adds it to apple crisp and other things. It's a wonderful berry in cooking. It's used for wine, juices, jellies.
It really sounds kind of like maybe like a cranberry.
Yeah.
Similar. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So that is aronia. And right behind, to the very back, behind some of the creeping junipers, are some of the daylilies that are the taller growing type. And I love all the different daylilies, the textures and different things. Let's just walk down the way a little bit.
They're so dramatic.
I got to show you a couple of types that are especially dramatic. One of these is called Bannerman daylily, and it has a nice kind of a burgundy tone to the petal, but it also has yellows and creams. But notice the roughly fringe edge that it has. Isn't that unique? And right to the side of that is one called Spider-Man, which is a very intense red with a yellow throat. And aren't those beautiful?
Big flowers.
And I've planted those kind of in a little drift, so that when it's blooming, you get a little more bang for your buck. So I kind of enjoy planting in 3s, 5s, then that's kind of a natural rather than a blocky 4. Sometimes doing that is nice. There's another daylily that's over in another area, but I love the name, and it speaks well to the intensity. It's called Primal Scream.
Oh.
It's a bright orange tangerine daylily, and it's beautiful. And as long as we're talking about daylilies, let's take a look at some of the true lilies.
Yeah.
The true lilies, of course, grow from bulbs. The daylilies grow from a fleshy root. Look at this daylily over here with that intense yellow with a little bit of white. It's a beautiful, strong grower. I love the name, Buttered Popcorn. Wouldn't that be fun to be the person naming? I don't have enough creativity for that, but that would be a nice job for someone, is to name new perennials and flowers. Well, right beside that is a beautiful true lily that grows from a bulb, and it's got a wonderful trumpet shape, and it is called Golden Trumpet. Isn't that beautiful?
They are so beautiful.
And there's another one just down the way here with a red, kind of a burgundy throat and white. Again, that's the Orion pet, the cross between Oriental and a trumpet lily. And very beautiful. And I can smell the fragrance from here. And when we get a little closer, that type of lily has a very strong fragrance. When we talk about lilies that just finished, the Asiatic lilies are upward facing. They're beautiful too. They don't have a fragrance. As long as we're passing by, I've got to mention a rose bush.
Okay.
The rose bush that we're noticing there is one called Campfire. It was developed in Canada, and notice the different colors within that same rose bush. Yeah. There is deep pink, there's rose pink, there's cream, there's two-tone blossoms that are part cream, part rose, part yellow, and Campfire is the name. Developed in Canada, fully winter hardy with no extra protection or care, and blooms in flushes throughout the season. And it's really beautiful. Even in some of the hot weather we've had, it's still blooming beautifully.
And so in front of that, to us in front of that with the kind of the fuzzy leaves, the fuzzy green leaves?
Lamb's ears.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, lamb's ears. They're fun for kids because the woolen leaves are kind of fun to play.
They're very tangible, yeah.
Yeah, it's
I've just never
sensory gardens.
I've never really seen them that big.
They spread into nice-sized clumps, so we've got about 3 that enlarged into very nice clumps.
And then here again, you've got a big fleece flower.
Yeah.
And then is this a 9 bark next to it?
Yep, another of the wine-colored 9 barks.
So just a great contrast of colors too. Yeah. You're not getting just all one color. You're getting a real great array of shades and hues here.
And there's quite a bit of space in between some of the areas, so I've got room for expansion. I ordered 2 years ago different irises. I want some of all the different irises. And of course, iris named after the goddess of the rainbow, because iris is the one perennial flower that has probably the widest color ranges of any. Say, now I got to show you our next tree or shrub, depending on what you want to call it. A mulberry tree.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got to take a look. We can maybe even find some to sample.
Oh, I think I see some.
So this is the Trader mulberry, which is a winter hardy mulberry, and it's got an interesting, fascinating history. Now, there was a mulberry tree growing in Valley City, North Dakota, that was brought to Valley City, a farmstead by Valley City, by German immigrants in the late 1800s. And that mulberry tree, 100, Now it's 120 years later, stood there, and finally someone decided we need to propagate that because it's a wonderful mulberry. Most mulberries are not hardy for North Dakota. So this one was propagated and gotten into the nursery trade, and if you did no pruning, it can get 30 feet tall. I might have planted it in the wrong spot because it's kind of close to the house. Oh, not kind of close. I suppose, what is it? Maybe, I don't know, 8 feet out or something. But I want to keep it pruned to about 10 feet high so I can pick the berries. And it's got a wonderful little berry, and we're going to sample some. But to describe the flavor is maybe like a cross between a raspberry and a blueberry and a black raspberry. They're fun because when the fruit is fully ripe, it falls into your hand. If you have to pull on it, it's not quite fully ripe and sweet.
When you can't make it to City Hall or school board meetings, local journalists from Inforum.com will be there to report the facts and get your questions answered. Local news works for you. Stay up to date at Inforum.com.
So Don, as we go along deeper into the yard here, we come up to the garage is offset off the back of the house, but you've got really a wonderful display of clematis here.
Well, we had a perfect spot to put clematis. The old saying with clematis is they love their face in the sun and their feet in the shade. And they don't really like hot sun. So we located it on the east side so they get full sunshine the whole morning, early afternoon, and then shade from the heat of the day. And they love it. And of course, then we put wood chip mulch over the base also. And we have 2 of them, and they are on chain link fence turned into a trellis. I attached the chain link vertically with cup hooks on top and bottom and a metal rod, and stretched the chain link fencing between, and clematis can twine around those and make a really nice strong trellis for them.
How many clematis plants do you have per section there?
Per section, and the sections of fence I believe are 3 foot wide. That must have been like a 3 foot tall chain link fence, so it's 3 feet wide I believe, and there are 2 plants per section. I wanted it to fill out well.
Yeah, so, they certainly did.
So yeah, 2 plants per section on that.
That's just really dense and very, very bold. It's something you see, I'm like looking back through the yard, it's great to see that kind of height in the back.
Yeah, it is. And I've got to tell you about one thing as long as we're here. Behind us is a gate that goes from kind of the front or side yard to the backyard, and it's a white gate with trellis around. And I have a picture of me in front of this very gate when I was 6 months old.
Oh!
And I'm not going to say how old I am, but I'm somewhere between 40 and 90. But anyway, this, it was 66 years ago. I have a picture of me in front of this gate. When my folks sold their home, it actually was in Lisbon along the banks of the Cheyenne River, and that house isn't there any longer because they put a dike there. Well, anyway, so when they were dismantling the house, the yard, I took the gate. And so I installed the gate here, so I got a picture of me when I was a little baby in front of that very same gate. Beside the gate, we have a wisteria growing. It's not blooming right now, but it has in the past. And wisteria is the vine that you see down south, a great big huge vine with the cascading bluish purple blossoms. This is a winter hardy one called Summer Cascade, and sold in the local garden centers. And it does develop, it has bloomed already, does develop the cascading blue flowers. So it's kind of fun to have that. And I got more bee's knees petunias in containers. So let's take a look to the backyard.
Great.
Before we do that, I got to mention 2 tools. You know, we've talked tools before, but a couple of tools that I really like. In the past, I've mentioned weeding hose. And so this was a hoe that I ordered online. And notice that it's relatively thin.
Yeah.
It's high quality steel, so it takes a good sharp edge, and relatively narrow so that it will skim through soil. You don't need a big blocky hoe to hoe weeds. So a thin one. And then also, once in a while the joints don't act like they did when I was 18. So this year I got a kneeler, a cushioned kneeler. So when I'm going along and pulling weeds, I can zip up and down with that kneeler, and my knees don't get quite as scarred up. So yeah, wonderful. I love my kneeler. Okay,
that's great.
Let's take a walk to the backyard. And now, I wanted a rose garden. This is the rose garden I never promised Mary, but we got a rose garden. And it has Canadian hardy, Canadian winter hardy shrub roses. There's a William Baffin, which is the dark pink flower next to the trellis, and that can be trained up a trellis. It's not a true climbing rose, but if you attach the long canes to it, it can be our most winter hardy climbing type rose, William Baffin, developed in Canada. And then I have some of the Morden series, the Morden Blush, the Morden Belle, beautiful winter hardy with some pruning. They come really, really nice back. And so I love the Canadian rosebush. A couple of other things that I really enjoy. Along the kind of base of the porch, back porch, is a neat oval globe-shaped plant. I have little short sections of hedge. That's Globe Carigana. Globe Carigana with no trimming, maintains just a neat little globe shape. And above that, the back kitchen windows, I have 2 window boxes with a German geranium. We've carried that through cuttings ever since we discontinued our garden center business, but that's one called Sophie Cascade.
Okay.
It was developed in Germany for the European window boxes. And it's, mid-season, it's starting to kind of trail over, but by the end of the season, it has beautiful cascading, called Sophie Cascade is the pink. It's a nice, pleasant pink, and so that's always fun. Yeah, roots easily from cuttings, or you can bring the plants inside and winter them under fluorescent lights each year, which is what we do.
How about the big daisy here? Is this the Becky?
That is Becky daisy. With Shasta daisy, the white daisy, perennial daisy, has been around for a long time. Luther Burbank developed that. He's the one that, the russet Burbank potato that McDonald's used forever for their French fries. Well, he developed that. And, well, anyway, one of his claims to fame was maybe the late 1800s, early 1900s. He developed the Shasta Alaska daisy. Our beautiful white daisies, and there have been improvements made, and Becky has a larger flower with a stronger stem, so it's less likely to flop apart. So I like Becky Shasta daisies kind of in combination with other things. And now, I'll always admit when I got some weed troubles, back here in our rose garden, I've got some weeds growing. It has an underlayment of cardboard, and it has wood mulch, wood chips. I didn't do it thick enough. And so weeds can find their way in, or sometimes they blow in from seeds that grow on top. And so any type of mulch is going to need some maintenance. Even rock mulch. Rock mulch gathers dust, little leaves, that kind of makes a little soil type thing. Weeds start growing in that too. So any type of our mulch is always going to use or need some sort of maintenance as well.
Now, I love your place out here because you've got great tree lines kind of setting off your barrier.
We're lucky to have established trees on the outer perimeters.
But you've also planted trees in the yard, too. You've got a really nice birch here.
Yep. And Canada Red Cherry.
Yeah, gorgeous.
Yeah. Did you know that the Canada Red Cherry, which is the very popular burgundy leaved tree, do you know that was discovered first in North Dakota by a fellow by the name of Lawrence Schubert in the Bismarck-Mandan? Chokecherries were sold by the soil conservation people, and he was working with a batch of seedlings, which are normally green, the green chokecherry. He saw a burgundy-colored leaf. And so he was sharp enough to take that seedling, and it became the Schubert chokecherry. Now, Schubert chokecherry isn't maybe the best marketing name. The Canadians took that, started propagating, and called it the Canada Red Cherry. So anyway, it's kind of an interesting marketing thing, but they can be traced to North Dakota as well. Yeah, beautiful. And, by the way, that it does produce choke cherries, the same edible as the green leaf choke cherry. I would love to be able to pick choke cherries, but the bird seed is to it on that. We could probably take a look back at the vegetable garden.
Let's do it. Okay, so here we are. We're outside your vegetable garden here, and this is quite the plot. This is not only very big, it's very clean and well organized, I gotta say.
Well, thank you. Now, it's been a little bit of a challenge for weeding because this lot that we're on here had horses.
Oh.
And so most of what we're standing on was a horse pasture. And so we've seen a lot of horse pasture weeds. There's lots of very tall clover that wants to keep growing and sprouting. And not the little lawn clover, but the big, tall, yellow sweet clover. And there is leafy spurge, and there's lots of kind of pasture-type weeds that we're working on. So if you look off to the north end at the very, very weedy area, that's what this whole area was like before we started reclaiming it into vegetable garden. So I'm still working on part of it, and the rest of it's coming along quite well, I think.
Well, I think I don't notice the weeds. What I notice is the big corn there. Your corn's coming in pretty well.
It's coming along pretty good. I've got to tell you one method that I'm using for loosening our heavy clay soil.
Okay.
You know, and of course, the heavy clay soil in the Red River Valley or anywhere else in the region that battles with clay. Clay soil is it's difficult to work with. It's sticky when it's wet. It's like concrete and cracked when it's dry. And sometimes a person might think, well, what if we add sand? Sand would the sand lighten up. But those sticky little clay particles will bind to sand and make brick. That's how they make brick. Clay plus sand will bake to a brick. And so instead, it's organic matter. So we could add compost, we could add leaf mold, well-rotted manure that hasn't had chemicals. I happened across a mushroom grower that was looking to get rid of his mushroom compost. And of course, they're grown organically, and it's a mixture of sawdust, like aspen shavings. And so he was looking for a way to get rid of that after his mushroom crop was harvested. So I said, well, I'd love that material. So I am adding that to all of our flower beds and garden. And so you can see the little bags that I'm ready there to cut open and spread on out. So if you see the kind of mulch between the tomatoes and the onions and the broccoli there, I'm spreading that out on top, and then that will help conserve moisture, help suppress weeds, but then also that organic matter will be incorporated into the soil because organic matter will help make our clay soil more mellow and workable. And so that's kind of what I'm doing. We can kind of walk along. I enjoy growing a little bit of everything. I'm not into Brussels sprouts yet, so I don't have Brussels sprouts.
But you do have a lot of cabbage.
Yes, I'm German. Got to have plenty of cabbage, and I've enjoyed gardening since I was a boy, and so I got to have a little bit of everything. The tomato plants, we do about 48 tomato plants.
But you only do 4 varieties, right?
4 varieties. Yeah. We wanted enough of one kind so that Mary can and freeze, and it's fun to experiment with the different types. But you've got a good memory, John. Because we discussed tomatoes a few podcasts ago. So yeah, I've got Big Beef, Celebrity, Sun Sugar Cherry, and one of the mountain varieties. I believe it's Mountain Pride. And then next to that are the potatoes. Mm-hmm. I love potatoes. And it's fun. Notice the different colored blossoms on the potatoes. Yeah. Some are white, some are pink, and we've got the russet Burbank that I mentioned, and we've got Norland, which is a wonderful NDSU introduction. That's a wonderful smooth-skinned red potatoes that produces well for our area. That was developed, I think, back in the 1950s at NDSU, Norland. And I do Pontiac, which is a large red, Kennebec, a nice large white-skinned potato. So it's fun. We produce enough potatoes for our family to last the whole winter.
That's great.
That's fun. Fun to watch them grow like that. And then we've got squash. My favorite squash, of course, I've been a buttercup grower since, because my mom always grew buttercup. I love buttercup squash. I found one that was even better, and that was from a company in North Dakota, Fullerton, North Dakota, called Prairie Road Organic Seed. And it's called, interesting name, Uncle David's Dakota Dessert Squash. Uncle David's Dakota Dessert Squash. It's a buttercup type, but we found it's much sweeter. We used to, with our buttercup type squash, bake them and put brown sugar inside.
Okay,
Well, these
yep.
have the brown sugar built into them. They're the sweetest squash that I've ever.
What's the name again? Uncle Dave's?
Uncle David's Dakota Dessert Squash. Prairie Road Organic, they have an online, I mean, I'm not endorsing a company, but there are not many North Dakota seed companies,
Yep.
so they deserve some recognition. And Prairie Road Organic Seed, Fullerton, North Dakota, good online presence as well. Then beyond that, I've got watermelons and muskmelon, and it would have been a good hot spring and summer to have gotten those out a little earlier. I get the flowers done and get the garden in, and I was a little slow getting our watermelons started. I start the plants early, so they get a little bit of a head start, and then plant them on clear plastic mulch. But I was a little late.
So I got to ask out here. So we're out here in your vegetable garden. How do you handle watering? 'Cause this is a big. How big is this vegetable garden area?
Oh, well, the vegetable garden is about 45 feet wide by approximately 100 feet.
Okay.
125 feet.
Okay. So how do you handle watering? I don't see sprinklers.
No, during these years have been kind of dry. I mean, this year it depends what rain cloud you're under, if you're under rain cloud. South edge of Fargo here, we're dry, really dry. The lawn is crunchy. I save the water for the flowers and the vegetable garden. And I feel during these dry years, if I water overhead, it seems like I'm not soaking it down as good. So what I use is I've got a hose run from the house. I don't have sprinkler systems. I run hoses from the house out to these various areas. I've got a hose running kind of in an inconspicuous space from the house all the way up to the vegetable garden. And then I just have to turn on one little spot by the house to kick that one in. And I use a lot of soaker hoses. Soaker hoses that will soak directly down into the soil, and you don't get as much air evaporation. Or sometimes on individual plants like tomatoes, I might just go along and patiently hand water too. It's actually better for disease prevention if you can water just the soil and the roots and not get quite so much on the leaves. And so each of the flower beds too, I don't have a hose running directly because then it'll be across the driveway and things like that. But I have one handy to run out to the various flower beds we have. Someday I'd like to have underground piping, like a hydrant to each of the spots, but that's a future.
That's another
future
project. So you talked about how it's been kind of a dry couple of years. How has this year been for you? I mean, weather-wise, and because we started off, we had a really, really hot beginning of June, and it's really been a pleasant July. But but it's not been a lot of moisture. We haven't gotten a lot of rain.
Right, and I
So how have
really
things
see the moisture stress, obviously on the grass. But other things that you were able to keep watered seem to be growing well. The heat came at the wrong time for peonies and iris. The blossoms just didn't last. But now when it's been a little cooler, the daylilies are doing well. The other lilies, true lilies, they're all doing well. And I think the vegetable garden, as long as you can keep it watered, and it's going to be a tough winter to have any averages for moisture, because even around Fargo-Moorhead, it has varied so greatly from one part of town to another, or neighborhood to neighborhood. But generally, I think I'm going to call it so far, I think a good growing season, kind of an odd growing season. It started out, we went from winter right to summer and heat.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of an odd growing season, but I think it's going to be shaping up to be a good one.
I would say looking at your garden, looking at your yard overall, it's been a pretty good year for you.
Yeah, it has. As we make our way around the side yard back up to the front, I got to show you one other thing.
Okay, let's take a walk.
We planted a row of lilacs, and I did use the weed control fabric under those because, of course, it's going to stay in place. So in an area like that lilac hedge, and also I really learned on lilacs. I made the mistake at our other location to plant lilacs at the rear of the lot, and they died. They don't like wet feet. They don't like moisture staying where lilacs are. And so they died because it was an area where the water flowed to. So this time I put them on the edge of a little ridge where the water will positively drain away. And this is only their third year.
They look good.
From little tiny lilacs. They're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
And I did use the weed control fabric with those because they're going to stay in place. I'm not going to be digging and dividing. But alongside of the house here, got something a little unique. When this house was in Fergus Falls, built again in 1895, the house had an outside cellar. You know, one of the old-fashioned slanted cellar doors that you opened the two doors and would go down into the basement where they could deliver coal or anything like that. At our other place, I didn't have one. When we moved the house from Fergus Falls, of course, that cellar door doesn't, and the basement doesn't come with it. But every time I would haul potatoes and plants and everything else into the basement, I'd have to go down this little winding stairs down into the basement. And this time when we moved the house, I thought we're going to have one of these outside cellar ways. So I installed one. They actually sell them, good heavy metal cellar doors. So we can swing those open. You have an outside access that goes right down to the basement. We have a good solid door, exterior door down there that locks securely. And that allows us to haul the potatoes, the squash, the onions down into a root cellar in the basement. And also stacked right beside the cellar here are all my cell packs, 6-packs, trays that I use to grow the bedding plants. So I can carry potting soil and the trays down in, get them ready for next spring. And then in the spring of the year, when it's time to bring things out, up out of the cellar way. And so a lot of homes could use this cellar way. Maybe not into your finished family room, but into a utility room or such. And of course, some garages now I see have that. They have a spot going down into the basement. But it's amazing. We like our exterior. And so this is over on the north side of the house. So we have things that like the shade. We have the white Annabelle hydrangeas with their great big clusters of blossom. They also take a few years to kind of get to their fullness. So anybody that's planted a new one, the first year or two, the flowers are going to be smaller. And after they've been in place for a number of years, the flowers get big, they get their normal size. And on the outer perimeter of those, we have, again, curving kind of hedges of hosta. Curving plantings of hosta. Notice that the hosta have a little bit of a, starting to get a little bit of a yellow. I mean, there are yellow hostas,
yeah.
but these are kind of the blue-green. They're getting a little bit of a yellow tint. They want moisture. And hostas are one reason they do well in the shade. They like moisture, most of them. There are some sun-loving hostas too, but these like the shade, and when they get a little stressed for moisture, they start losing that rich color. So I need to get some water on these. And so it's fun to have this side of the porch. The porch is kind of a wraparound porch, so it's fun to have one side of it that is shade, so we can grow coleus and begonias and things.
The begonias look great.
Things like that. That's an All-America winner called XL Viking. XL Viking.
Is this one of
Not
the ones,
related to the Minnesota Viking.
Is this one of the ones that you grew from seed?
From seed.
Impressive.
Yeah, thank you. And the coleus also is one of the All-America winners.
Looks like some Kongs in there.
Yes, the coleus up on the step. Yeah. Gosh, you know your plants, John. This is fun. Those coleus are called Kong. It's a seed-grown coleus, and it's well named, you know, King Kong. They have very big leaves, a strong grower with vibrant colors in an assortment.
And they'll get pretty big.
They do.
You'll get some height on them.
They'll get good, yeah.
I know them because we grow them, but yeah, they're good.
That's awesome. Oh, and I love that statement. We know it because we grow it. There's an old saying in horticulture, to know a plant is to grow it, or the vice versa, to grow a plant is to know it. That makes a person so experienced with plants. If you actually grow a certain type, then you know all its little oddities and peculiarities and fun things that it needs.
Little personalities.
Yeah, exactly. So then we wind around up to kind of the north side. We have a flower bed here. Also, annuals and some perennials. This flower bed has been a challenge, and I finally understood why. The plants never grew quite as large in this flower bed. And then it occurred to me, it was obvious, right in front of me. Well, the trees, the established trees that are growing right beside it, this flower bed is obviously underlain with many, many roots, which are taking the moisture. So I have to water this flower bed twice or 3 times as often as I do other flower beds. I do have mulch on the perennials, but even those, I found that daylilies and some things that liked water just don't get enough water there. And so I moved all daylilies out of there. Iris do well with less water, so they do well. Got things like some Joe Pye weed and other things. The burgundy plant right in front of us, interesting plant called smoke bush. Royal, what is the last part of that name? Royal or maybe Royal Splendor smoke bush. And it's a nice burgundy color. Smoke bush, because they produce a flower in big whiffy, is that a word?
Wispy, yeah.
Wispy poofs of bloom. So when they're blooming, they're fun.
And they'll get pretty tall.
Look like clouds of smoke. It will. This particular variety isn't fully winter hardy, so it keeps freezing back. So there are other smoke bushes, smoke trees that will maybe be a little more winter hardy, but I wanted the one with the purple leaves.
Well, Don, thank you very much for having us over. This is really, really great. I know I appreciated a day out of the office. I know our producer, Chris Kurzman, appreciated a day out of the office. This has really been a lot of fun, and we're going to have you over to our place soon,
Oh, that'd
too.
be fun. It's fun to do these road trips, these field trips. And yeah, it's fun. It's been fun talking about the different things, because each gardener has unique things, and it's so fun to visit. That's why yard tours are so fun, and that's why I'm looking forward to being at your yard.
Well, so if people have questions for you about their own yard or garden, what's the best way that they can reach you?
Easy ways to email me and send a photo or two if you'd like. And send some photos of your yard too, the different people's yards. I love seeing it. But anyway, email me or with a question or comment. Email me donald.kinzler, Kinzler, at ndsu.edu.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for another episode of Growing Together. Don, thanks again for having us over.
Yes, my pleasure, and have a good week, everyone.